Welcome to the Tudor Dixon Podcast. Today we're gonna go through a survivor story. We've all been watching as the families have been mourning the losses of the Texas flooding, the campground that I think everybody as a parent has watched these parents learn that their children didn't survive the flooding. And I think that many of us, if we know someone who is involved, we're trying to figure out how to support them. And if we don't, I think that so many, I know from my perspective, I've watched this as a parent and I've thought, I can't imagine what it's like afterward, what the questions that you have, what their last moments were like, and just how do you sleep? How do you survive? How do you move on? And we're so blessed to be graced today with Kim Cantin. She actually survived a very similar situation, a deadly 2018 mudslide in Montecito. It was a natural disaster. This was 23 people that lost their lives, and Kim, your husband and your son were among those people. And thank you so much for coming today to share your story.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you a little bit of what happened. It was eerily similar, I think, because it was in the dark in the middle of the night, right? That part of the mountain came down, and there had been a forest, one of the largest wildfires in California history the month prior, and it took all the foliage out of the mountains. And Santa Barbara is kind of where the mountain meets the sea. There's mountain range. There's about 4 miles, and then there's Pacific Ocean. And so there was car-sized boulders sitting precariously on the hillside. And I looked at those houses thinking, oh, I feel so bad for those people. Our house was down in the village, so we weren't very concerned. I was concerned about the houses up on the hillside with the boulders. And what happened, sadly enough, was about 30 days later, there was torrential rain, and about half an inch fell in 15 minutes. And on top of that, there were 7 water mains in the mountain that all gave way. So it was like Niagara Falls on top of torrential rain. And when you have a forest fire, what it leaves is kind of like a plastic soot, I would say. And so it just slid down. And so in the dark, at about 3 in the morning, the mountain came down, and a neighbor across the lane from us, and near the creek, he looked over at our house, and car-sized boulders jammed up on the underpass, and you'd hear the zing, zing, zing. We didn't know what was happening in the house. We were all up trying to get dressed to get out. We knew the heavy rain. And the neighbor said he saw a 30-foot wave plume up around the curve of the creek, but it couldn't go anywhere because it jammed up boulders, and it crashed down on our house with my family in it. And my husband was on, he had seen it. He'd opened the front door, and he says, "Back door now," and he ran to the backyard, and there was a glass door there, and he was on the other side of the door saying, "Kim, get out, get out, get out." But my hand got stuck in the door. And by the time the Aware and Beware alarm went off on my phone, I was chest deep in mud. And I had watched my Irish setter dog get rolled over with mud, and as it filled up in the house. My son and my daughter were in different parts of the house. My daughter had run to get her rain boots when my husband said, "Get dressed, let's get out." My son probably went to his room to get his computer. And my 14-year-old daughter was washed away about a football field and buried alive under 20 feet of mud for 6 hours with just a tiny pocket of air the size of a volleyball with a teeny tiny hole. She'd push on her entombment, and it didn't budge. And he screamed and screamed and screamed. I was washed away 2 football fields, found in a debris pile in an intersection, wrapped in electrical wires, severely injured. And when I got rescued, I was in the hospital at about 8:30 in the morning. So I was on that debris pile for quite a long time. And at about 10:30, I heard the door open, and they said, "Do you have a daughter named Lauren?" I said, "Yes, I do." And they said they just rescued her. And her rescue was shown around the world because it was like Phoenix Rising, that she was able to survive what she endured. There's part of a roof over her.
How did they know where she was? They heard her screaming?
Yeah, it was actually, I think angels were with us that day. Because when they came to find me in the intersection debris pile, they said, "Where was your home?" Which was scary for me to hear the was. And I thought I must be in my backyard somewhere, right? And I just took my one hand that worked and I pointed back and I said, "Right back there." And two of the firefighters walked to where I pointed because there was debris piles everywhere, cars and trees, everything. And there was a gas leak, and so they couldn't hear things well. But Ben, the firefighter in Montecito, he said, "I think I hear screaming," and they thought it was a house nearby that was still kind of standing a bit. And he sent Andy over, and Andy, with the gas leak, was listening, and he heard it. So it was just absolutely a miracle that I went where I went. And
so that
and
was
then
how they
Andy,
found your daughter.
yes,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And then we searched for my son. He was one of the missing, and that's why Texas is so so hard for me to watch, because I just feel so immensely for everyone. There was 23 people died that night, my husband and son, my 17-year-old son, but there was two that were missing they couldn't find, and one was my son and one was a beautiful baby girl who was 2, Lydia.
So that night, how did you know that? I mean, I think so many of us have gone to sleep in the rain, and certainly you never considered. I mean, you said you thought the houses up on the ridge may be in trouble, but you never considered that your house would be washed away. How did you know to get up even and be prepared?
There was heavy rain, and I was more of a nervous Nelly, and so overprotective. I even had a hotel room reserved in town, so if it got really bad and we felt unsafe, because we evacuated every time during the Thomas fire, when they said to evacuate. So I just said, "Hey, if we get uncomfortable, let's get out." So we had our go bags, we had the cars staged across in a neighbor's driveway so that we could put sandbags up near us. We had the drains checked, and when we got up, we're just like, "This is too heavy of rain." Like, my husband looked in the garage. He says, "It's coming up with water." Like, we'd never seen anything like it. It was torrential. It was torrential rain coming down. And it came on the heels of a wildfire that took everything of security off that mountain.
You said your hand got caught. Those moments, I think that a lot of people wonder what those moments are like before disaster strikes, and then as you are separated, and what is going through your mind? Were you knocked out? What happened after that?
It was sheer terror. All of a sudden, it went from pitch black when I looked out the window when we were getting ready to get out, to an eerie yellow. All of a sudden, what I didn't know, there was a big gas explosion in town, and it made the whole sky light up like, I would say, like a nuclear bomb. And I just said, I go, "Dave, something really wrong's going on. Something really wrong's going on." And so, yeah, we just, it was terror. So my husband opened the front door, slammed it right away because he was checking on how the house was doing with rain. He, I think, saw that 30-foot wave coming toward us, because he blasted past me.
That's when he said, "Back door, back door."
Back door now. And he's, "Get out, get out, get out." And I couldn't, because my hand got stuck in the door and the mud was pushing against it. So I couldn't open it because, I mean, all of a sudden the mud's, at my chest. And then I went under. I did a lot of, I did some praying. I can tell you that in what I yelled. And then I went under and I felt everything. And they interviewed a Texas survivor who said it felt like she was in a wash machine. And I know exactly what she felt like, but I called it a trash compactor, because as the house was falling apart, I was hit by granite, bricks, broken glass, everything. And I was so much pain. I said, "Oh my God, if you want me to die, just show me the white light, like, get me out of this pain." And at that point, I must have been knocked out. And then all I remember is kind of coming to on a debris pile. I was being rained on. It was cold. It was January. I was in bare feet. I had put on my turtleneck and leggings from the day before, and they were, my one hand could tell they were all shredded. And I was pulling up big pieces of wood. And when I got to the hospital, it was like someone took a wire brush to the front of my body and rubbed vigorously. I was pretty beaten up.
It's interesting to me that you said, I called to the Lord and said, if this is my time, I can't take the pain, take me now. He didn't take you, but it knocked you out. It was like, this is all I can bear. And there was grace to get you to the point where you could get to the hospital. I think that's a powerful statement.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I remember yelling, I said, Jesus, save me, Jesus, save me, Jesus, save me. That's what came. And then when I was on the debris pile alone, freezing, and what's interesting is I learned something is I just said the Lord's Prayer about 20 or 30 times, and it was calming for me. That's what I did. I just said the Lord's Prayer. And what they say in different religions, each one of their prayers has a melodic stance to it that's actually very calming. So the Our Father, the Lord's Prayer in Christianity is that melodic tempo that has something to do with to calm your nervous system. In other religions, they have ones too that have that same, a cadence that is calming. And when everything was unfolding, that's clearly where I went.
Has your daughter talked about what happened to her?
Yes, I wrote a book, and we did an audible, and she asked to read her part of being buried alive and how she survived it. And it's pretty, like, she's the strongest human I know, of how she kept herself sane for 6 hours, fully conscious. I got knocked out. I was actually fortunate. I got knocked out
the whole time.
She was fully conscious, buried alive in a contorted position under 20 feet of mud. And if she tried to push on anything, nothing would move. So she thought that was her tomb. And so to hear her talk about what she did to survive was, she's the strongest human I know.
Wow. And what was the recovery like? You were in the hospital. You have, I assume, more injuries than just the
Sure.
skin burn on your chest. It's got to be pretty severe. And at the same time, half of your family is still missing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I got into the hospital. I had 2 surgeries the first night. I thought I had a broken hip. I had, big laceration, a big part of my flesh was taken out, and I kind of had packed it back in, but I packed it with all the debris. So they had to operate on that. My leg was cut down to the bone at the knee, through the quad muscle. So a couple surgeries. I was just eggplant purple. And that wire brush was like all over my body. So I had to learn to walk again. Wheelchair, walker. I walked like a 95-year-old for a long time, and have really, really, really worked for 7 years to get my my normal gait back. And I have, I can, if someone saw me today, they wouldn't know.
Wow. And then, did your daughter, what were her injuries?
She had, I think, cracked ribs and bruised or fractured pelvis. But in her rescue, in the video, it's stunning because the firefighters get her out and they say, can we carry you to the ambulance? And she says, no, I'll walk.
Wow.
She says, no, I'll walk. And she was injured, and she's like, I'm walking. And it was, they couldn't believe it. They're like, this is incredulous that she survived it. And then she's saying that.
And she was what, 14, you said?
She was 14 years old.
Good.
Yeah, she's
grief.
22.
Wow.
22 now. Yeah.
That is amazing. My daughter will turn 14 next month, my middle daughter. And I just think about that. And I think that's where we are today. So many of us across the country have heard these stories of the flooding and the kids being washed away. And that's where you dealt with both things. Not only were you in it, but you also lost a son, lost a husband. So walk us through, how do you help people today? Sadly, your tragedy is not the last tragedy. And what we know is that Camp Mystic will also not be the last, because these things happen. And you've been so strong. I mean, I love listening to you, because you sit here and you talk about how strong your daughter is. And I'm like, I hear these stories. You're like, and I packed my arm and I kept going, and and I'm calling to the Lord, and I get through the hospital. Now I've gotten my gait back, and I'm like, and all of this suffering the most immense loss a human can suffer. So
Yeah.
tell us how you talk people through this, and how do you stay, you're so positive, and you just have such a great outlook, which I think that when you say that about your daughter, I'm like, well, look who her mother is.
Thank you. You know what I'd say, and my heart bleeds for everyone in Texas is, I found for me is that the community helped me heal. And I'm a type A, didn't ask for help. I was the helper, and I was filleted open, and I needed help, and I accepted it. And so one is be open and vulnerable to help, because you're going to need it. All the help. And it's for quite a long time, right? And for the community to use whatever talents you have to help. I have met so many amazing people that just showed up who I did not know. Like when we looked for my missing son and baby Lydia for 3 years, we looked for their remains. And I had what's called a sacred search team. It was about 7 people. I knew 6 of them. I did not know 6 of them before this tragedy. So if I said to you, Tudor, hey, it's 2025, right? Will you go out with me every 2 weeks until 2028 to look for these missing kids? Not many people's hands would go up. These guys came out. It was a search handler and his professional search dog. It was a general contractor with a big rig, so she could get down all the debris and the debris piles. A woman who lost her house and would go spot to see what's in there. It was just, and a scout dad. My husband was a scout leader, and his son was in the troop, and he didn't want me to find Jack by myself. He wanted to honor my husband so much. And so they used their talents to help. I went to a local CVS early on, and everyone recognized who I was. It was all over the news. And a woman stopped and she says, "You're Kim, right?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Here's my card. My name's Kimmy. My husband died in 9/11. And I will do anything for you. If you just need me to go get your dry cleaning, I'll go get your dry cleaning." And that was the magic. Everyone has something they can offer. So I would encourage those in Texas not directly impacted, find a way to help. Find a way to help. And I think through that, what I've heard is those people who helped me and the other survivors of the mudslide found that was a period of great meaning and growth for them by helping. And for those who, like me, were impacted and not used to taking help, is be open and vulnerable to help. And I was open to everything from widows groups, talk therapy, MDR, trauma therapy, somatic healing, because what Texas has endured and what I endured was called sudden traumatic death. That's different from anticipatory death. My dad just died at 86. He had dementia. We knew it was coming. He lived 86 great years, right? He did it right. I have with sudden traumatic, you have grief and you have trauma. So work on both. And I've worked diligently for 7 years. And I told my daughter, I said, "Honey, we've never been through anything like this. We don't know what we don't know. We need to invest to get the help we need so that we're going to be okay again." It really affects your nervous system. I want to be fit for human consumption again. I have a lot of living to do. I'm relatively young. I want to embrace life and know that, they won't believe me when I say this, Tudor. They probably don't want to hear it now. But what I've found after 7 years reflecting, I do want my husband and son back every day, my dog and my house. I'd love that. But there have been silver linings. I've seen the best of humanity. I have seen the best of humanity.
That is an amazing testimony. Incredible, because I think that it's the biggest fear of every parent is, like you said, the traumatic sudden death. And that is, and loss. You found him, it was 3 years later that you found his body?
The university team, they had an anthropology team, bioforensic anthropologist and archaeologist. The students were out with the professor, and they didn't find all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but they found some. And it was enough for me to be able to bury him with some dignity. And I just didn't want him in a pile with a bent up chain link fence and some stuff from someone's garage. I didn't feel he or baby
Was that
Olivia.
close to your house?
It was relatively, yeah. I don't want to say exactly because I don't want little shrines to it, but yeah.
Right. And your husband was found right away?
He was found, they told me, I think on day 2, they did a trial run. The first day after my surgery, they came in and say, who do you want to be here when we find stuff out? And, the priest came, the nun came, all that stuff. And they told me that Chester, my 90-pound Irish setter, was found 6 foot up a tree crushed and didn't survive. And so that was kind of the test run. And then the next morning, someone from the sheriff's office came in and said, we found Dave. And I said, alive? And they said, no. And I said, are you sure? They go, we're sure. They had done all the testing and everything to make sure it was him. And he was found on the shoreline at the beach. And so he was found early. At the time I was going to the hospital, I think he was being found. The people saw him, and luckily he was near the top of the debris pile, so they saw him.
It is a miracle to think that coming out of that house and having such a sudden mudslide. I mean, you think about the earth just going right through your house, that you have 2 survivors of that story.
It was a miracle.
And a miraculous. Yes. I mean,
it was absolutely a miracle.
You look like you didn't have any like major scars on you that people will know you when they see you, is what I'm saying. And here you had, what you said was like having your body just rubbed with sandpaper, but you look like you've come out of it. And I'm sure your daughter knew who you were right away.
Yeah, they actually, we were in different hospitals, but we FaceTimed, and a woman who was in helping me put a scarf around my head and tried to like put on some makeup-y stuff just so it didn't scare her. Because I was, I looked like, I was black eyes, I was purple all over.
But no, I mean, you have a cut on your arm, and your leg. But it's amazing that your face, I mean, I know that sounds
oh my God.
silly to say.
I could have lost all my teeth.
Right.
I could have lost my eyes. Because think about it. There's 62 homes that were destroyed that night, and all their windows were being broken. And I was swimming with shards of glass, broken windows,
Yes.
5 electrical wires, all the caustic stuff in people's garage. And I know I didn't lose a tooth. I didn't lose an eye.
And is your daughter in that same situation? That is, I mean, you think about that and you really feel like that prayer surrounded you to be protected in a way.
Absolutely. I knew absolutely. I was helped to live. There was no reason when you saw the car-sized boulders, the 100-year-old down trees, and everything I was with, there's no reason that it makes sense that I survived, and that I ended up on the top of the debris pile. I wasn't in the middle of it, so I couldn't breathe. Lauren, she had a pocket of air, guess what? In front of her nose, not her belly button, not her knee. It was exactly where she needed it. So, it was by the grace of God that we survived. And it's just, she has one scar, and I asked her, one more prominent scar. I'm not going to say where it is, but I go, is that concerning? She goes, that's my superhero scar. She's like, that's my bad woman scar. Like, she's proud. I'm like, good for you.
That's right. That's right. She's a miracle. She might as well have something to show it. So you wrote the memoir. I love the fact that you said you did an audiobook, and she gets to tell her own story. And I think that's powerful, because especially for anybody who is going through this, but also I think for all of us who have just lived what we've learned from the news. We saw the fires in California a few years ago. We saw the fire in Hawaii. We saw the floods in North Carolina and the floods in Texas. And I think that human nature is to say, I just need to know that survival story. And you've been able to come out from a space of really living this trauma and going through that yourself. And I think you're the miracle story that everybody goes, wow, how is it possible? And two people in one family get to be the miracle story. So it's called Where the Yellow Flowers Bloom. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Where yellow flowers bloom.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it was COVID and everyone was staying inside. And so, I started to think it was, a few years out. I'm like, I better start writing some of this down so that I remember it all for my future if I get grandchildren, that they know the story of what happened. And as I started to write it, I realized I was going from desperate grief to a peaceful acceptance. And I said, I think this might help someone. And and then my Sacred Search team were like, you need to write some of this stuff down. There was some incredible things that happened. And so I did. And I never thought I'd ever be an author. I mean, I never finished a book like in elementary school because I was so active. And I was doing cartwheels. I wasn't reading, any book at the library. And so I wrote a book, and it's won 7 awards for inspirational memoir. And I don't say that in any kind of ego way, but why I'm happy is it's people are telling me those who've lost children or have suddenly found their life pivot in just a traumatic way. They've found healing in it. And it's a fast read. I mean, people read it in like 3 days. Like it's just I made it short chapters, to make it so it's easy. But yeah, if it can help people, that puts purpose to what happened to me. Like what Viktor Frankl says, right? He has the book, The Meaning of Life. And he says, if something really bad happens to you, how do you put meaning to it? So if this puts meaning to what happened to Lauren and I and my family, and it helps other people, I'm 100% for it. I'm 100% for it.
Well, and I think for parents, especially parents of faith, and we know that the Camp Mystic kids were at a Christian camp, and that knowledge, just those moments that you described to me of saying, if you're going to take me now, I can't handle all of this pain. I can't handle this. And that God listens, and I think there is a peace in knowing that those girls knew how to speak directly to their creator, to God, and call to him when they needed help. And that I think is, because I've thought about this, I have 4 girls, and I think about what would it be like in a situation like this. And there is so much peace in knowing that they know the Lord, but to hear your story on top of it is just it brings so much peace to the anxiety of parenting and of tragedy.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And what I used to be a Sunday school teacher, for a while at the, one of the nuns says, hey, would you teach the junior high class? And I'm like, I don't know if I know all this stuff well enough. Yeah. And she's like, well, I'll give you, the book or all this stuff. And I just really love that time with the junior high age kids. And I would tell them, what's the thing said most often in the Bible more than any other time? And I said, it's fear not, fear not, fear not. And so, some of those learnings kind of stuck with me, and I think they're going to help those for the parents of those kids that were washed away. They're in pure joy right now. We have it harder. We don't get to see them, but they're in pure joy. They're in pure joy.
And that's what we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's beautiful. And I think it's interesting because even when you said, well, my dad passed away, but we were prepared, and it's still that same situation. That there are no tears of pain or suffering. That they are in a place of pure joy, and that we will see them again. But I think in the meantime, while we're here, Where Yellow Flowers Bloom is such a great opportunity to sit and kind of absorb that and realize that there is pain, but there's a way through it on this earth and where we are today. And that in this life, we can still find joy after such pain like that. And I'm just so grateful that you wrote it. Where can people get it?
On Amazon. And it's Where Yellow Flowers Bloom on Amazon. And it's also on Audible. But it's interesting about the title, right? Which I think, I want to say to everyone who's suffered so much in Texas is all the debris in Montecito, which was 30 square miles, was full of arsenic and really bad bacteria, and the university team said nothing really should grow in it at all. And where we ended up finding some of my late son was in a pile that was graced by yellow flowers. And that's why I said where yellow flowers bloom, it's where you can find beauty where otherwise you wouldn't expect it. And I will say to the I'm so deeply sorry to all the people in Texas. And I just hope it gets lighter for them. And I really hope they lean into getting as much support as they can get. And I really hope the community does like what Santa Barbara did for me and the others, is the community people showed up. It's like Mr. Rogers says, look for the helpers. They show up. There's angels that show up. So be an angel to someone if you weren't directly impacted. And if you were impacted, receive the love and support. It's healing. It's really healing.
Well, thank you. You are one of those angels, and I'm so glad you came on today. Kim Cantin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you all for joining us on this podcast. For this episode and others, you can go to TudorDixonPodcast.com or the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to watch it, the whole video is on Rumble at Tudor Dixon. Make sure you join us next time and have a blessed day.